Covent Garden always sounded like itself before you even saw it. You could come up from the tube and the noise would already be waiting. Coins clinking into a guitar case, a laugh rolling out of a pub doorway, a violin hanging a clean note in the air like a ribbon. It was a place that felt staged on purpose. Even the rain, when it came, seemed to arrive on cue. I told myself I was only cutting through. Quick walk, home, done. But I stopped anyway, because the melody reached me in a way that didn't feel like hearing. It felt like remembering something I'd never lived. The busker was set up near the apple market, hat low, collar turned up, a battered instrument case open like a mouth. His hands moved with the calm of someone who'd played the same piece 1,000 times. The tune itself was simple, minor key, tight little steps, a pattern that repeated, then repeated again, each time with the smallest shift, like a finger tightening around your wrist. At first I thought it was just sad, that kind of London sadness you could mistake for beauty if you were in the mood for it. Then I saw the first listener, a man in a charcoal suit, early 40s, the kind of polished you couldn't buy off the rack. He'd been walking briskly, eyes forward, phone pressed to his ear. The moment the melody hit him, his stride faltered, like his body had forgotten how to do legs. His hand rose to his throat, not dramatic, automatic, like he was checking he could still breathe. He turned slowly, as if the sound had a physical pull. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. He stared at the busker the way you stare at a photograph of someone you thought was dead. Then he ran. Not a jog, not a hurried walk, a full sprint, suit flapping, heel catching on the stone, phone slipping from his fingers and bouncing once before spinning into a puddle. People shouted. A couple laughed, because that's what you do when you don't understand. The busker didn't look up, didn't miss a note. I stood there, feeling the smallest prick of unease, and told myself it was a coincidence. London was full of odd little dramas. That's why it worked as a city. Everyone could be the main character for 30 seconds. Then the second listener reacted. A woman near the edge of the crowd, late 50s maybe, hair pinned up neatly, theater scarf looped around her neck. She'd been smiling at the music, the way people do when they're giving themselves permission to be charmed. When the melody repeated, her smile drained like a sink. Her eyes narrowed. She said something, one word, sharp, and her hand flew to her handbag. She opened it too fast, fingers fumbling, as if she was trying to find something she needed right now, right this second, or the world would end. What she pulled out wasn't pepper spray or a phone. It was a small, folded paper envelope, the kind you'd keep a photo in. She stared at it like it was a snake. Then she did something stranger than running. She stepped forward, leaned toward the busker, and whispered through clenched teeth, "I paid." The busker's playing stuttered for the first time. Just a heartbeat. Not enough for most people to notice, but enough for me. He recovered instantly, fingers relocking into the pattern, and kept going. The woman backed away, hand still gripping the envelope, as if it might bite her. Her face had gone pale. She turned and pushed through the crowd, not running, but moving with the urgent, controlled speed of someone trying not to show fear. 2 reactions, 2 panics, same tune. The crowd murmured. Someone dropped a coin. Someone else filmed. And then the third listener, the one I didn't see at first, made the hair on my arms lift. He was standing near the pillar, half hidden, a young man in a dark hoodie. He didn't look like a tourist. He didn't look like a banker. He looked like the kind of person London swallowed daily and forgot. His eyes were fixed on the busker with a flat, dead focus. When the melody reached the part where it climbed, 4 notes, quick, tight, his expression changed. Not panic, recognition. He smiled, and he raised his hand to his ear as if listening for a signal under the music. Then he tapped something in his pocket and turned away, disappearing into the foot traffic as if he'd never been there. The busker finished the phrase and let it hang. Coins landed, a few claps. Normality trying to reassert itself like a coat you put on when you're cold. Then the busker finally looked up. His eyes met mine. And in that second, with the music still vibrating in the stones, I knew he'd been watching the reactions, not the crowd. I knew he'd expected them. He dipped his head slightly, almost a nod, almost a warning, and began the tune again from the start. Same minor key, same pattern, as if the city itself had asked him to repeat the threat. That was when my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. A number I didn't recognize. One message. Stop listening. I stared at the screen, the blood in my ears suddenly louder than the music. When I looked back up, the busker's eyes had shifted away, scanning the faces around me like he was taking inventory. And I realized the crowd wasn't just an audience anymore. It was a list. I left Covent Garden the way you leave a room after someone says something you can't unhear. Fast, head down, pretending I had somewhere urgent to be. But the tune followed me anyway. It clung to the edges of my thoughts, the way a smell clings to your clothes after a fire. Every time I tried to hum something else to override it, anything bright, anything major, it slid back in underneath, patient and persistent. By the time I reached the corner near Long Acre, my phone buzzed again. Do not go home. I stopped so abruptly someone bumped my shoulder. I muttered an apology without looking up, heart already climbing. The number was the same. No name, no context, just commands, like someone had mistaken my life for a story they were directing. I told myself it was a prank. Some creep had seen me watching, decided I looked like easy entertainment. London was full of bored people with sharp elbows. But then I remembered the suited man sprinting as if his lungs were on fire. The scarfed woman whispering, "I paid." That wasn't for my benefit. That was for his. I ducked into a coffee shop that smelled of burnt beans and sugar, ordered something I didn't want, and took the seat with the best view of the street. My hands were steady enough to hold the cup, but not steady enough to drink. I opened my notes app and typed the melody as best I could. Up, down, tight, tight, tight. The little climb, the repeated fall. I'm not a musician. My brain doesn't translate sound to paper neatly. But the tune felt like it had carved itself into my skull, leaving grooves. I work in communications, not glamorous PR, not crisis management. The quiet kind. Internal newsletters, event briefs, donor updates for cultural charities. Words, schedules, people pretending the world is controllable if you format it correctly. Which meant I had one superpower. I knew how to find people. I searched Covent Garden busker minor key tune panic like it would give me an answer. It didn't. Of course it didn't. The internet doesn't react that fast unless someone's bleeding on camera. So I did the next best thing. I opened social media. There were already videos, short clips, shaky framing, comments full of laughing emojis and LOL what happened, and that guy ran like he stole something. Someone had slowed it down, zoomed in on the suited man's face mid-sprint, circled it in red like they'd discovered a new species. But no one had captured the woman with the envelope clearly, and no one had captured the hoodie man at all. That made me feel worse than if they had, because it meant someone had been careful. I watched one clip again, focusing on the music. The microphone on the phone wasn't great, but the melody was there. The minor key sat in the background like a shadow. I tapped my foot unconsciously, tracking the pattern, and something clicked. It wasn't just a tune. It was structured like a signal. Short phrase, pause, repeated phrase, slight change, then restart. Like a knock on a door where the rhythm mattered more than the sound. A code. My phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a message. It was a call. I stared at it until it stopped ringing, then immediately rang again. Whoever it was had patience, and the kind of insistence that suggested they were used to being obeyed. I answered without speaking. At first, there was only street noise on the other end. Traffic, footsteps, distant voices. Then, beneath it, faint and unmistakable, the same minor key melody, played softly, close to the phone. A voice, calm and low, spoke over it. You heard it. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat had tightened into a knot. You stood there like you recognized it. The voice continued, as if reading my body language through memory. That's dangerous. Who is this? I managed. A soft laugh. Not amused. Tired. Not your enemy. Not your friend. Just someone who doesn't want you to be collateral. What is the tune? A pause long enough that I thought he'd hang up. Then, it's a leash. That doesn't answer. It will, he said. It always does. The line went dead. I stared at my phone. The cafe suddenly too loud, too bright. The people around me were normal, messy, living their lives without knowing a threat had just brushed past them like a cold hand. I should have done the sensible thing then. I should have called the police. But if there's one thing my job taught me, it's this. If something is real, you can find its paper trail. And if something is old, you can find the rot. I paid for the coffee I barely touched and stepped back into the wet London air, letting the cold slap me awake. Covent Garden wasn't far. Neither was the truth. I turned back toward the market, against every sensible instinct I had, and as I walked, the tune played again in my head, steady, patient, like a countdown only certain people could hear. I found the busker spot empty. Not he'd packed up and left empty. Not end of the set empty. Abandoned. His open case was gone. The little amplifier, the battered sign, all vanished as if they'd never been there. Only the wet stone remained, reflecting the market lights like nothing had happened. People milled about. A different performer had claimed the space. Someone with a bright voice singing something cheerful. Major key. The kind of sound that made you want to believe in Friday nights. I pushed through the crowd, pretending I belonged, scanning faces for any hint of earlier panic. Nothing. The city resets quickly. It has to. I stepped aside and opened the video again on my phone, zooming in on the suited man's face. There was just enough clarity to see his features. Clean-shaven, strong jaw, expensive haircut. The kind of man whose LinkedIn profile probably had words like strategic and visionary. A name tag flashed in one frame, clipped to his lapel, blurred, but I could make out 3 letters before my eyes went watery. M-A-N? Not enough. So I did what any communications person does when faced with a mystery. I started with the obvious institutions. Covent Garden sits at the edge of Theatreland.
Suited men with badges often meant corporate events, conferences, donor nights. I checked the schedules of nearby venues in my head: the Royal Opera House, the big theaters, the galleries. Anyone with a badge could be staff, a guest, a sponsor.
The woman with the scarf felt theatrical, a stage manager type, someone used to chaos. I walked toward the Royal Opera House entrance, where people stood smoking under the awning despite the drizzle. I hovered near the door like I was waiting for someone, listened for snippets of conversation. One of the staff, a young man with a lanyard, glanced at me. "You all right?" "I'm meeting someone," I lied. "There was a commotion earlier. A man ran." He shrugged. "Covent Garden, always something." "I think he had a badge. Maybe from here?" The staffer's eyes flicked, just a micro-movement. He knew something, or he'd seen something he didn't want to say. "What color?" he asked carefully. "White," I said. "Maybe. With a name." He exhaled through his nose. "Could be donors, could be contractors, could be anyone." "But you saw it." He hesitated, then gave me a look that said he was choosing the least risky truth. "I saw a bloke bolt, yeah," he admitted, like he'd seen a ghost. People laughed. Then he nearly knocked over a couple of pensioners and vanished toward Strand. "And the woman?" I pressed. "Older, scarf, looked like she knew the music." He frowned. "Didn't notice." I thanked him, turned away, and my phone buzzed again. "You're looking for the wrong person." I stopped under the shelter of a closed shop, heart thumping. Another message followed immediately. "They always look at the messenger, never at the hand." I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. Then I realized something. The busker wasn't the key. The listeners were. 3 people reacted. One ran, one begged, one smiled. A banker, a theater woman, a hoodie man. What could possibly link them? I started walking, mind racing, and the answer came in a way that felt like someone else slid it into my thoughts. They all knew the tune, not as music, as proof, as a threat, as a reminder. I needed a name, any name, to pull on, so I went back to the clip, paused it again on the suited man, zoomed in until the pixels broke into squares. The badge was useless, but in one frame, his phone screen was visible as he ran, bright white, with a contact name at the top. It was blurry, but I could make out 2 words. M. Ha. Ha. Hawthorne? Hawkins? Holly? My brain grabbed the first familiar one. Hawthorne. I searched quickly. Hawthorne Finance London Covent Garden. Too many results. I tried again. Marcus Hawthorne Canary Wharf, and narrowed. Still too many. Then my phone rang again. Same number. I answered. The voice sounded closer now, like he was speaking from somewhere with less traffic. "I told you not to go home." "I didn't," I snapped. The anger surprised me, sharp and hot. "Who are you?" "I'm someone who heard that tune once and lived," he said, barely. "What is it?" He inhaled slowly. "It's called the minor key." "That's not—" "It's what they called it," he cut in. "Back when it started. Back when a tune was safer than a text. You play it where the target can't pretend they didn't hear it." "Who are they?" Silence. Then softly, "People who don't want daylight." My stomach dropped. "This is blackmail." "It's worse," he said. "Blackmail is a tool. This is a system. The tune is the knock. The panic is the answer." I swallowed hard. "Why me?" A pause. "Because you stopped," he said. "Because you looked. Because you noticed the reactions. That's enough for them to decide you're a problem."
"I didn't do anything. Not yet," he said, and then the tune started playing again, faintly, behind his voice. "Listen carefully," he murmured. "They're going to play it again. Tonight." "Where?" Another pause, like he was weighing how much to risk. "Near the piazza," he finally said, "where the cameras can see everything and prove nothing." The line clicked off. I stood there in the rain, phone pressed to my ear, the echo of the melody like a bruise. Tonight, they weren't finished, and now neither was I.
Night in London does something strange to Covent Garden. It turns the place into a postcard of itself. Warm lights, gleaming wet cobbles, laughter at just the right volume to feel alive. It makes you forget that the city is also made of back doors and blind corners and people who know how to vanish. I walked back toward the piazza like I was returning to the scene of a small crime I couldn't report. Every sensible part of my brain argued with me. Go home, call the police, block the number, pretend you never heard the tune. But something in me had already hooked onto the mystery like a fish onto a line, and the more I tried to shrug it off, the more it tightened. The piazza was busy. Tourists with shopping bags, locals weaving through them with practiced impatience, performers warming up with scales and jokes. The air smelled of roasted chestnuts and fried onions from somewhere nearby. People were filming everything because that's what people do now, document the city so they can prove later that they were in it. I hovered near the steps, scanning. There were buskers everywhere, which was the point. A tune could hide easily among other tunes, like a knife hidden in a drawer of cutlery. I spotted the hoodie man first. Or rather, I spotted someone who moved like him. Same posture, shoulders slightly forward, gait controlled, eyes always flicking to exits. He wasn't wearing the hoodie now. He wore a dark bomber jacket, cap pulled low. If you didn't know to look, you'd never notice him. He was watching the crowd, not the performers. And he wasn't alone. 2 other men stood at opposite edges of the piazza, spaced like markers. Not talking, not looking at each other. But their attention moved in the same rhythm, scanning like synchronized swimmers. A crew. My skin prickled. I stepped behind a couple taking selfies and watched, trying to appear like a harmless bystander. Then I saw the busker. Not the same man from earlier, different face, different instrument. This one held an accordion, bright red, straps across his shoulders. He was older, beard flecked with gray, the kind of performer who looked like he belonged here, like he'd been here for years. He began playing. At first it was cheerful, something folkish, something that made people smile. Coins dropped, heads bobbed, a child danced. Then, mid-phrase, he shifted. The air changed. The melody dropped into minor, as if someone had dimmed the lights. The pattern began, tight steps, repeating phrase, small climb, then restart. The minor key. And it hit. Not me, not like the others. I felt it more as a weight, a heaviness in the stomach. But around me, I saw micro-reactions, tiny flinches, sudden stiffness. People who'd been laughing stopped laughing, as if someone had turned off the sound in their heads. And then, a woman near the fountain clutched her chest and staggered. Not a performance, real fear. Her eyes darted wildly, searching faces. She backed away from the music, bumping into someone.
mouthing words I couldn't hear.
A young man in a suit, different from earlier, froze, eyes locked on the accordion player. His fingers trembled as he tried to unlock his phone. And a third person, farther back, did something chilling. He smiled. The bomber jacket man. The same smile I'd seen earlier, the one that held no warmth. He raised his hand to his ear again. Signal received, and one of the other men started moving through the crowd with purpose, angling toward the woman at the fountain. My heart slammed. This wasn't only about blackmail. This was coordination, a coded sound, a trigger. I moved without thinking, stepping into the path of the man heading toward the fountain. I held up my phone like I was filming, like I was just another tourist capturing the performance. He glanced at me, irritation flashing. He adjusted his path slightly to avoid me. That tiny deviation was enough. The woman at the fountain saw him coming. She turned, bolted sideways, nearly slipping on the wet stone. People yelped. Someone laughed, assuming it was drunk drama. The man swore under his breath and lunged after her. The accordion kept playing, the minor key repeated, calm and relentless, like it enjoyed the chaos it caused. My phone buzzed. Don't interfere. A second message followed instantly. You're not the target. You're the witness. I stared at the screen, then back up. The woman had tripped. She hit the ground hard, palms scraping stone. The man was on her in 2 strides, grabbing her elbow. Not violently, but firmly, like he had a right to her. She screamed, a raw sound that cut through the music. People finally reacted. A couple shouted. Someone stepped forward. And then, like magic, the man released her. Hands up, face arranged into concern. "Madam, are you all right?" he called loudly, performing for the crowd. "You fell. Someone should get help." The crowd hesitated. Confusion bloomed. The woman scrambled backward, eyes wide, shaking her head like she couldn't form words. The man in the bomber jacket watched, still smiling. The accordion player finished the phrase and, without missing a beat, shifted back into cheerful folk music, as if nothing had happened. The crowd relaxed instantly, relieved to return to normality. A few people clapped, laughing nervously at themselves for getting spooked. The woman at the fountain was helped up by a stranger. She kept looking back at the performers with a terror that didn't fit the moment. Then she looked straight at me, not because she knew me, because she recognized something in my face. I had heard it too. I had seen the hand behind the tune. Her lips moved. 2 words. "It's back." And then she pushed through the crowd and vanished into the night. I followed her without thinking, weaving through tourists and streetlights, the sound of the piazza fading behind me. She moved quickly, not running, but purposeful, as if she knew exactly where she needed to be and exactly what would happen if she wasn't. She cut down a side street, past shuttered shop fronts, and a delivery entrance that smelled like old bread. Her shoes clicked sharp on the wet pavement, the sound too loud for stealth. She glanced back once, saw me, and accelerated. "Wait," I called. She didn't. We reached a narrow alley where the noise of the city dulled, swallowed by brick walls. She stopped abruptly and spun on me, and for the first time I saw her properly in the streetlight. Late 50s. Theater scarf, yes, but now it looked less like style and more like uniform. Her makeup was smudged at the edges, as if she'd wiped at tears or sweat. Her eyes were bright with a fear so old it had sharpened into anger. "Are you with them?" she hissed. "No," I said quickly, hands up.
I saw what happened. I saw the tune. Her face tightened. Don't call it that. What should I call it? She swallowed. The knock. I felt my stomach clench. You know it. Of course I know it, she snapped. I built my whole life around never hearing it again. She stepped closer, studying me like she was trying to decide whether I was dangerous or merely stupid. Who are you? My name's Mara, I said. It came out smaller than I wanted. I work nearby. I was just walking through earlier and...
And you stopped, she cut in, bitter. That's the mistake. The only safe thing to do is keep moving like you're deaf. I got messages, I said, from someone telling me not to go home. Her eyes flickered. You got warned. I got threatened, I corrected. She exhaled sharply. If they wanted to threaten you, you'd have more than messages. The chill that ran through me felt like ice in my ribs. Who are they? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her handbag and pulled out the envelope I'd seen earlier, creased now, gripped hard. She held it between two fingers like it was contaminated. This, she said, is what they use. A photo? She nodded once. A moment, a mistake, a thing you can't undo. They take it, they keep it, and they wait until you're just comfortable enough to think you're safe. And the tune is what? A reminder? It's a demand, she said, voice roughening. A way of saying, we're here, we remember, and we're collecting. I stared at the envelope. Why play it in public? Her mouth twisted. Because they learned the safest place to do evil is where everyone can see you. In a crowd, you can hide in plain sight. A car passed at the mouth of the alley, headlights sliding over us. She flinched, eyes tracking it until it vanished. They're not just blackmailing, I said. Tonight I saw them use it like a signal. Someone moved. She grabbed my wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Listen, she said, low and urgent. You need to understand something. The knock isn't for the crowd. It's for specific people. It's targeted. Precision. They play it, and if you react, they know you heard. If you don't react, they assume you've paid or you're dead. My pulse hammered. You said you paid. I did, she spat, over and over, for years. And it's back. Her face softened for a second, grief flashing under the anger. I thought it was finished. I thought... She stopped, jaw tight. Finished how? She hesitated, then seemed to decide that secrecy was a luxury she no longer had, because the man who ran it died, she said, or so we were told. My phone buzzed again, like it had been listening. She's lying to you. I felt the blood drain from my face. The woman saw the change in my expression and recoiled. What? She demanded. I held up my screen. She read it, and something in her eyes shifted. Recognition, then horror. They're watching you, she whispered. I don't know who's sending these. Her lips parted, then closed. She made a decision. Come with me, she said. Where? Somewhere with lights and witnesses, she snapped, then immediately corrected herself with bitter humor. As if that helps. She tucked the envelope back into her bag and moved past me, heading toward the main road. I followed, because what else could I do? Go home and wait for the tomb to find me. We walked fast, cutting through streets toward the Strand, the river air cold and damp. She didn't speak until we reached a small pub tucked off a side street. Warm lights spilling out, voices inside, life pretending it was simple. She pushed in, found a corner table under a dim lamp, and sat with her back to the wall. "Okay," she said, exhaling. "Ask." I sat opposite her, hands cold around my glass. "What's your name?" I asked first. She stared at me for a long moment. "Lenora," she said finally. "Lenora Blythe." The name rang a faint bell in my head, but I couldn't place it. "And why would I have heard of you?" A flash of something, pride, maybe, or old fame. "I was a stage manager," she said. "Royal Opera House, West End. I made chaos look like art." "And the knock?" "It started with a production," she interrupted, voice dropping. "Years ago, a charity gala, big names, bigger egos, and one night that ended wrong." Her fingers trembled on the table. "They recorded it," she whispered, "and then they made it into a tune." I swallowed. "A tune?" She nodded, eyes fixed on mine. "A melody you can't unhear," she said, "because it's not music. It's a memory with teeth." Lenora talked like someone who'd rehearsed her story 100 times in her head, polishing it into something she could survive. It was late, early 2000s, she said, a gala event tied to a theater fundraiser, the kind of night where donors drank too much and actors smiled too hard, money and art pretending they were friends. There was a VIP room, she said, staring into her drink as if it contained the past. Backstage, off limits, the usual. People broke rules because rules don't apply when you've got a checkbook. "Who?" I asked. She shook her head. "Names don't matter until they do." But they mattered, that was the point. "There was an argument," she continued. "A young performer, a donor. Someone said something cruel. Someone pushed back. It escalated." Her hands clenched. "And someone died." The pub noise faded. My brain tried to reject the words, but they sat heavy and real between us. "An accident?" I asked, though I already knew the answer wasn't clean. "A fall," Lenora said, "down a short flight of backstage stairs. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just a horrible thud, and then silence." She lifted her eyes. They were wet, but not with tears, with something sharper. "And because it was a room full of people with reputations, the first instinct wasn't to help," she said. "It was to protect themselves." My throat tightened. "They covered it up." "They tried," she said. "They called it a medical emergency. They moved people, cleaned, lied." "And her voice broke, then recovered. "I was stage management. I was the one who knew how to make things disappear between scenes." "Why did you help?" Lenora laughed once, bitter and small. "Because I was told," she said. "Because I was given a choice that wasn't a choice. Because the person who died wasn't the important one in that room." I felt sick. "And the recording?" She nodded. "Someone had a camcorder. This was before everyone carried cameras in their pockets, but there were still people who filmed everything for vanity. They caught it. Not the death itself, but the aftermath, the panic, the faces." She leaned forward. "You know what's worse than being guilty? Being visible." My phone buzzed again. She's telling the truth, not the whole truth. I ignored it, though my skin crawled. "So what happened?" I asked. "Someone got the tape," Lenora said. "Not the police, not the press. Someone else, someone who understood its value. And they blackmailed you." "Not just me," she said. "Everyone who was in that room, every face that appeared on that recording." Her fingers tapped the table in a rhythm I recognized, and my stomach flipped. She was unconsciously tapping the pattern of the melody. "They sent letters at first," she said.
Plain envelopes, a still frame from the tape inside, a demand, money, favors, access. And then they got smarter. The tune, I murmured. Lenora nodded. They realized a tune could reach you anywhere.
A note pattern you'd only recognize if you'd seen what it meant. They played it near your home, near your work, near places you couldn't avoid. If you reacted, they knew you were still paying attention. If you didn't, they assumed you were either paid up or gone. The pub felt too warm. My skin prickled. And why did it stop? I asked. Lenora's mouth tightened. Because the man who ran it, Graham Vale, was found dead. The name hit me like a flicker of old headlines. Vale. A fixer, maybe. A name whispered in theater circles. I couldn't be sure. Found where? I asked. In a flat in Camden, she said. Overdose. That's what they said. Police wrote it off. People sighed with relief. The knock stopped. And now it's back, I said. Lenora's jaw clenched. Yes. Why now? She hesitated, then reached into her bag and slid the envelope across the table toward me. Because something changed, she said. I opened it carefully, as if it might bite. Inside was a photograph, old, slightly faded, a still frame from a recording, grainy but clear enough, a backstage corridor, harsh fluorescent light, a group of people clustered around something off frame, faces turned, shocked, guilty. And in the corner, half caught in the shot, was Lenora, younger, eyes wide, hand over her mouth. But that wasn't what made my breath catch. It was the man standing beside her, face turned slightly toward the camera, a man in a charcoal suit, clean-shaven, strong jaw, the same man who'd run earlier in Covent Garden. Same face. Older now, yes, but unmistakable. Lenora watched me watch it. His name's Marcus Hawthorne, she said quietly. He became someone important. Finance, Canary Wharf, the kind of man who donates to the arts to look virtuous. I swallowed, throat dry. And he knows the knock, Lenora whispered, because he was there when the tape was made. My phone buzzed again, like a heartbeat. This time, a final message for the night. They're collecting again, and you're holding the receipt. It took surprisingly little effort to find Marcus Hawthorne once I had his full name. He didn't hide. Men like him rarely do. They build lives that look so legitimate you assume nothing rotten could survive inside them. A quick search showed me his face in glossy charity photos, smiling beside champagne flutes, shaking hands with actors, standing in front of gilded theater interiors. He was listed as a board member for at least one arts foundation. There were articles about philanthropy and finance, quotes about giving back, all the right words polished into place. Lenora watched over my shoulder as I scrolled, her expression tight. Do you think he's behind it? I asked. No, she said immediately. He's terrified. He ran. That's not the behavior of the hand. That's the behavior of the leash. Then who is? Lenora's eyes flicked to my phone like she expected the answer to crawl out of it. Graham Vale wasn't a mastermind, she said. He was a middleman, a collector, a voice. But someone taught him the tune. Someone taught him how to make fear sing. And if Vale is dead, then someone else is playing, she finished. The pub was closing, chairs scraping,
staff wiping tables, normal life moving on. Lenora stood, scarf pulled tight, and looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time as part of this. "You shouldn't have seen that photo," she said. "You showed me." "Because you were already in it," she snapped. Then she softened slightly.
If you walk away now, you'll still be in it. At least if you stay, you might understand what's coming. I didn't like how true that felt. Outside, the cold hit hard. London smelled of rain and exhaust and the faint metallic tang of the river. We walked towards the Strand, then separated at the corner. Lenora needed to disappear back into her own carefully built life. "Be careful," she said before leaving. "They like witnesses. Witnesses make leverage." "And you?" I asked. Lenora smiled without humor. "I've been careful for 20 years. It didn't stop the tune." She vanished into the crowd. I stood alone on the pavement, with my phone and a photograph in my pocket that felt heavier than paper. The next day, I went to Canary Wharf. Not because I wanted to, because the story had teeth, and I needed to see how deep they went. The Docklands always made me feel like I'd left London and entered a different city. Glass, steel, money, moving so fast you could feel it in the air. People walked like they had somewhere to be that mattered more than you. Marcus Hawthorne worked in one of the towers. I didn't have his office number. I didn't have an appointment. I had nothing but the stubbornness of someone who'd been dragged into a mystery and refused to be the passive victim. I waited near the lobby, pretending to be early for a meeting. It was easy. No one questioned a woman in a smart coat, holding a phone and looking mildly annoyed. At lunchtime, he appeared. He moved with confidence until he didn't, until his eyes scanned the lobby and landed on me. Something flickered in his face, not recognition of me as a person, recognition of me as risk. He angled toward the exit as if to slip past, but I stepped into his path. "Marcus Hawthorne?" I said. He stopped abruptly, then recovered with a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Yes," he said. "Can I help you?" "You were in Covent Garden yesterday," I said quietly. "You ran." His smile froze. "I don't know what you mean," he said, voice controlled. "I heard the tune," I continued, "and so did you." His jaw tightened. For a second, his mask cracked, and I saw raw fear underneath. "Who sent you?" he hissed under his breath. "No one," I said. "I'm not one of them." His eyes darted. People moved around us, oblivious. A security guard glanced, then looked away. "You shouldn't say that word," Marcus said, barely moving his lips. "You shouldn't even think it." "Then tell me what it is." He laughed once, sharp. "You don't get to ask. You get to leave." "I'm trying to help," I said, though I wasn't sure if it was true. Marcus's face hardened. "You want to help?" he said quietly. "Then forget you heard it. Forget you saw me. Forget your curiosity." He started to move, but I caught his arm lightly. "Lenora Blythe," I said. He flinched as if I'd hit him. His eyes snapped to mine, full of something ugly, anger, guilt, fear, all tangled. "She's alive," he whispered. "Yes," I said, "and she remembers." Marcus swallowed hard. "Of course she does." "Who's playing it?" I demanded. Marcus's gaze drifted to the reflective glass of the lobby doors, as if he expected to see someone behind him. "I don't know," he said, "and that's the truth." "You paid," I said, remembering her whisper. His mouth tightened. "We all paid. In money, in silence, in other things. And now it's back." Marcus nodded once, the smallest movement. "It never left," he said. It just waited. My phone buzzed in my hand. A new message. He's not your answer. He's your example. Marcus saw my screen light up. His eyes widened. They have your number, he whispered. I know. His face went pale. Then you're already marked. What do they want? Marcus leaned close, so close I could smell expensive cologne and fear. They want the tape, he whispered, or what's left of it. The tape was destroyed. He got in. That's what we were told. That's what we believed. But the knock isn't played for ghosts. It's played for people who still owe. He pulled back, eyes starting again, and then he did something unexpected. He slipped a business card into my palm. On the back, he'd written an address in hurried pen. Go there tonight, he said, if you want to understand why they're playing in Covent Garden again. And you? I asked. Marcus's smile returned, brittle. I'm going to do what I should have done years ago, he said. I'm going to run, properly this time. Then he walked away, disappearing into the flow of money and glass. I stared down at the address. It wasn't in Canary Wharf. It was in Soho. And beneath it, one more line, written shakily. Listen for the minor key. Soho at night always felt like it was holding its breath. The streets were alive, music leaking from bars, neon signs buzzing, people laughing too loudly. But underneath, there was a tension, like someone had stretched a wire between buildings and dared you to touch it. The address Marcus gave me led to a narrow street behind a row of restaurants, to a door that looked like it belonged to a storage room. No sign, no obvious entrance. I stood under a flickering light and listened. At first, I heard only the city. Then, faintly, from behind the door, a melody, minor key. The knock. My stomach tightened so hard I thought I might be sick. I forced myself to breathe, to keep my face neutral, and pushed the door open. Inside was a small stairwell leading down. The air smelled of stale beer and damp carpet. The sound grew clearer as I descended. Someone playing the melody, slowly, deliberately, each note like a step down into something you couldn't climb back out of. At the bottom was a room, dimly lit, a few tables, a bar, a stage in the corner. It looked like a private club, the kind of place you could rent for a members-only event. People sat scattered, not talking, just listening. And on the stage, under a single spotlight, was the busker from yesterday. Not the accordion player, the original one. Hat low, collar up. He was playing the tune on a violin now, the notes thin and sharp in the small room. I froze. He looked up. His eyes met mine again, calm as a surgeon. And then he nodded, this time clearly, as if to say, "Good, you came." I stepped forward, heart pounding, and took a seat at the nearest empty table. My hands were cold, my mouth tasted metallic. The other people in the room looked wrong for Soho. Too clean, too stiff, not regular clubgoers. They looked like professionals who'd been dragged here by something they couldn't refuse. A man in a tailored coat stared at his drink as if it might drown him. A woman with manicured nails kept tapping her foot in the rhythm of the tune without realizing. Another man had his phone face down, but his fingers kept twitching toward it like a nervous habit. They all looked like Marcus Hawthorne looked when he ran, people who thought they'd outpaced their past until it caught up quietly behind them. The violinist finished the phrase and let the silence settle. Then a voice spoke from the shadows near the bar.
"Thank you," it said. "You may stop." The violinist stopped instantly, lowering the instrument. He didn't speak. A man stepped into the light. He wasn't tall, not imposing, late 30s maybe, plain clothes, ordinary face, the kind of person you'd never remember if you passed him on the street. But his eyes were wrong, too steady, too amused. He smiled at the room, hands spread as if welcoming guests. "Good evening," he said pleasantly. "It's been a long time." No one responded. "Ah," he sighed, still shy, still hoping the past will handle itself.
He walked slowly across the room, and the people's eyes tracked him like prey tracking a predator. "I don't want to keep you late," he continued. "I know you all have respectable lives now, important schedules, charities to support, families to pretend deserve you." A few people flinched. "Let's make this simple," he said. "We are missing something that belongs to us." My pulse hammered. My phone buzzed silently in my pocket, but I didn't dare check it. The man's gaze swept the room and landed on me. He paused, smile widening slightly. "And we have a new face," he said softly. "How refreshing." Every head turned toward me. The spotlight might as well have snapped onto my skin. I forced myself to keep my expression blank. "I'm here by mistake," I said. The man chuckled. "No one comes here by mistake." He stepped closer, eyes bright. "Tell me," he said, voice gentle, "did you enjoy the performance in Covent Garden?" I didn't answer. He tilted his head. "The 3 listeners reacted beautifully. Panic is such an honest response, don't you think? It cuts through all the social manners." My stomach dropped. He'd orchestrated it. He leaned closer. "You're curious," he murmured. "Curiosity is adorable. It's also fatal." The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I could hear someone breathing too fast. I swallowed. "Who are you?" The man's smile didn't change. "I'm the one who inherited a tune," he said, "and the debts tied to it." "Inherited from Graham Vale?" I guessed, watching his face. At the name, a flicker crossed his eyes. Annoyance, maybe, or grief. "Graham," he said softly. "Yes, poor Graham. He thought he could quit." A chill ran through me. "He was killed." The man shrugged. "Consequences are not murder. They are simply the shape of choices." He turned away from me, back to the room. "Now," he said, clapping his hands lightly once, "we will get to business." He gestured toward the violinist. "Play it again." The violinist lifted the instrument and began. The knock filled the room, tight and relentless. And as it played, the man spoke over it, voice calm. "If the tape is not delivered within 48 hours, he said, "I will start releasing what I have, little pieces, little frames, little whispers, into the lives you've built." A woman sobbed quietly. The man's eyes glittered. "And for those of you who think you can run," he added, "remember, you can't outrun a melody. It follows." My skin crawled. He glanced at me again. "And you," he said, voice soft, "our witness. You will help, whether you want to or not." My phone buzzed hard, as if on cue. I pulled it out without thinking. A new message. Same unknown number. "Run. Now." I looked up. The man by the bar smiled wider, as if he'd seen the message too. "Don't," he whispered. But it was too late. The violinist hit the little climb in the melody, 4 notes, tight, and 3 men near the door started moving, toward me. I ran. I didn't plan it. I didn't decide it. My body made the choice before my brain caught up. Lunging up the stairs, boots skidding on the damp carpet. Behind me, I heard movement, chairs scraping, a shout, the violin's last notes snapping off like a string cut mid-song. I burst out onto the street, Soho night slamming into me. Music, laughter, headlights. For a heartbeat, the normality almost convinced me it hadn't happened. Then footsteps pounded behind me. I sprinted, weaving between people, adrenaline turning everything sharp and fast. A group of drunk men laughed as I shoved past. Someone yelled. The city didn't understand the stakes, and that ignorance was both camouflage and curse. I cut left, then right, heading toward the brighter streets where cameras watched, where crowds could swallow me. But whoever was following me knew Soho better than I did. They didn't chase like thugs. They moved like professionals, cutting angles, predicting my turns, using the crowd as cover. My phone buzzed again in my hand. I almost dropped it. Don't go straight home. Go to the station. Which station? It didn't say. It never said enough. Ahead, I saw the glow of Leicester Square. Tourist Central. Bodies everywhere. If I could reach it, I could disappear. I pushed harder, lungs burning, rain slick on my face. A hand grabbed my coat from behind. I yanked free, spinning, and got a glimpse of the man's face. Plain, focused, eyes empty. He reached again. I darted sideways into a narrow gap between buildings, barely wide enough for one person. It was darker there, quieter, the city suddenly feeling like a mouth closing. I squeezed through, scraping my shoulder on brick, and emerged onto a side street that smelled like frying oil and wet garbage. Footsteps followed. My heart hammered against my ribs like it wanted out. I saw a doorway ahead, lit, open, a theater stage door, security light above it. Without thinking, I shoved inside. The smell of dust and paint hit me. The corridor was narrow, walls covered in old posters and safety notices. I could hear muffled voices farther in, actors, staff, someone laughing. I stumbled forward and almost collided with a man carrying a bundle of cables. He startled, eyes widening. "Sorry," I gasped. He opened his mouth to complain, then his eyes flicked past me toward the door. His face changed. Not confusion, recognition. He'd seen the men outside. He grabbed my arm and yanked me sideways into a small storage room before I could protest. The door closed softly. We stood in darkness, listening. Footsteps entered the corridor outside. Slow, controlled. Someone spoke quietly, too quiet to make out words. The man holding my arm leaned close to my ear. "Don't move," he whispered. I could barely breathe. The footsteps paused outside the storage room door. A shadow moved under the crack. Then, faintly, I heard it. Not the full melody, not the knock played clean. Just the rhythm tapped softly, 3 quick taps, pause, then the little climb pattern, like a code. The man beside me stiffened. His grip tightened painfully. "Oh God," he whispered. "You know it too," I wanted to say. "You've heard it before." Outside, the footsteps shifted. The door handle twitched lightly, testing. Then a different sound, a voice, calm and distant, like someone speaking from memory. "Not here," it said. "She went out." The footsteps retreated. A beat of silence. Then the corridor door opened and closed again. The man beside me exhaled shakily. I turned my head toward him in the darkness. "Who are you?" I whispered. He didn't answer immediately. Then softly, "Someone who shouldn't be involved anymore." He flicked on the storage room light. The sudden brightness made me blink. The room was cramped, stacked with props. Broken chairs, fake flowers, a cracked mirror. The man was in his 30s, hair slightly messy, eyes tired.
He wore black jeans and a crew shirt with a theater logo. I recognized him suddenly, not from personal life, but from the world Lenora had described. Stage crew. Theater bloodline. He stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. "You're not one of them," he said slowly. "You're new." "I was at Covent Garden," I said. "The tune." He flinched. "Don't say it. You know what it is." His jaw tightened. "I know what it does." My phone buzzed again. Another message. "Trust him. He's the only one left who can hear the difference." I looked up, eyes wide.
"I'm getting messages," I said. "Someone's warning me." The man's expression hardened. "Then you're already in deeper than you realize." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "My name's Elliot," he said, "and if they're playing the knock again, it means they think the tape exists." "Does it?" I asked. Elliot's face went pale. "I don't know," he whispered, "but I know who might." Elliot led me out through the theater's back corridors, avoiding the main entrances, moving like someone who knew which doors squeaked and which cameras were real. We slipped into the night again, but this time I wasn't alone. "You work here?" I asked as we walked fast through side streets toward Covent Garden again, because of course everything spiraled back there. "Freelance," he said. "Stage crew, tech, whatever pays. London's a patchwork if you're not rich." "And you've heard it before." He didn't answer right away. His jaw worked, as if chewing the truth. "I was a runner," he finally said, "back then. Tiny kid, desperate for a job. I carried coffees, fetched props, did whatever they asked. And one night, I heard something I wasn't meant to hear." Lenora's story unfolded in my head, the VIP room, the fall, the tape. "You were there," I said. Elliot nodded once, stiff. "I didn't see the death," he said, "but I saw the aftermath. I saw people cleaning like it was a spill, not a person. I saw Lenora yelling at someone to keep the stage door shut." His eyes flicked toward me. "And I saw someone with a camcorder." "Who?" Elliot shook his head. "I never knew his name, but he wasn't staff. He was adjacent, like he belonged everywhere without belonging." We cut through a narrow lane and emerged near the piazza again, quieter now, late enough that the tourist energy had thinned. The performers were packing up. The lights still glowed warm, but the edges felt sharper. Elliot slowed near a small doorway, tucked beside a closed shop. "Down here," he said. He unlocked it with a key from his pocket. "I shouldn't have this," he muttered, "but London teaches you to keep options." We descended into a basement space that smelled of paper and dust. It wasn't a club. It wasn't a storage room. It was an archive. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with boxes, old flyers, photographs, scripts, programs, theater history packed into cardboard. A desk sat in the center under a lamp, and behind it sat an old man with silver hair and glasses, reading a program as if time hadn't moved on. He looked up slowly, eyes narrowing. "Elliot," he said, voice dry. "It's been a while." Elliot swallowed. "Mr. Pritchard." The old man's gaze slid to me. "And who is this?" "A problem," Elliot said, "or a solution." Mr. Pritchard sighed, setting down the program carefully. "Those are the same thing, usually." I stepped forward. "We need to know about a recording," I said. "A tape from a backstage incident years ago." Mr. Pritchard's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. "There are many tapes," he said gently. "The theater records everything. Rehearsals, performances, memories."
This one was illegal, Elliot said. Blackmail. The old man's gaze hardened. He stood slowly, surprisingly steady. You should not say that word here, he said. Elliot flinched. They're playing it again, he whispered. Mr. Pritchard froze. For the first time, I saw fear crack his calm.
The knock, he murmured, barely audible. Yes, Elliot said. It's back. Mr. Pritchard sat down heavily, as if the years suddenly weighed more. Then someone is digging, he said. Someone thinks the archive holds what they want. Does it? I asked. He looked at me like he was measuring how much truth I could handle. No, he said finally. Not here. Elliot's shoulders sagged slightly. Then where? Mr. Pritchard's eyes flicked to the shelves, to the boxes, to the paper records of lives and lies. There was one copy, he said quietly, one physical tape, and it was taken. By Graham Vale? I asked. Mr. Pritchard's mouth tightened. Vale was a courier. He didn't create the system. He transported it. Who created it? Elliot demanded. Mr. Pritchard closed his eyes briefly, as if bracing. A man named Silas Trent, he said. The name meant nothing to me, but Elliot's face changed. I've heard that name, Elliot whispered backstage like a curse. Mr. Pritchard nodded. Trent understood power, he said. He understood that in a city like London, the most valuable currency is not money, it is shame. And the tune? I asked. Mr. Pritchard's fingers tapped the desk unconsciously. 3 quick taps, pause, then the climb. He commissioned it, he said, from a composer who owed him favors. A melody simple enough to remember, specific enough to identify. A private alarm bell. My skin crawled. And now someone inherited it? Yes, Mr. Pritchard said softly. Trent disappeared years ago. People assumed he died, or fled, or got bored. But systems like his don't die. They get passed on. Elliot leaned forward. Who's running it now? Mr. Pritchard looked at him with a sadness that felt like warning. I don't know, he said, but I know where the tape went. He reached under the desk and pulled out a small ledger, old and worn. He flipped pages with careful fingers, stopping at one. He slid it toward Elliot. A storage unit, he said. Rented under a name that wasn't real, but the address is real. Elliot's eyes widened as he read it. It's in Limehouse, he murmured. The river, the canals, places where things transfer quietly. My phone buzzed again. The tape isn't the only thing in that unit. I stared at the message, then at Elliot. What else? I whispered. Elliot's voice was tight. Something that proves who's been playing the tune. Mr. Pritchard looked up, eyes hard. Then you have until dawn, he said. Because once they realize you're looking in the right place, they will stop playing music and start making it. Limehouse at night felt like a different London. Quieter, darker, the river air sharp and cold. The lights along the water looked like scattered coins, and the streets between warehouses carried a silence that didn't belong in a city this big. Elliot drove us in a battered car that smelled faintly of sawdust and old coffee. He didn't talk much. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. We found the storage facility tucked behind a chain-link fence, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. It was the kind of place you'd never notice unless you were looking for somewhere to hide something. Elliot killed the engine and stared out at the rows of metal doors. This is a bad idea, he said flatly. Agreed, I replied. We got out anyway. The gate was locked with a code, but Elliot had brought bolt cutters. He snapped the chain cleanly, winced at the sound, and we slipped inside. The facility was empty, or pretending to be. No staff visible, no cameras obvious, but that didn't mean none existed. We moved quickly down the rows until we found the unit number from the ledger. Elliot crouched by the lock, hands shaking slightly as he worked on it. He was good, too good for a stagehand. London teaches you extra skills when you grow up needing them. The lock popped open. For a second, neither of us moved. Then Elliot lifted the metal door with a soft screech, and the smell hit us. Dust, damp, something metallic underneath. The unit was small, packed with boxes, cardboard, plastic bins. A couple of old suitcases. Elliot stepped in first, flashlight beam cutting across labels. Programs, he muttered. Old scripts, photos. He opened one box, rummaging. This is just theater junk. Look deeper, I said, though my voice felt thin. Elliot opened another suitcase. Inside were tapes, VHS, mini DV, old formats, stacked like bricks. He froze. My heart slammed. That's it. He lifted one tape carefully, no label, just a small strip of masking tape with a handwritten code, MK3, minor key. Elliot's face went pale. Oh, God. He set it down like it might explode. Then he found something else under the tapes, an envelope, thicker than Lenora's, sealed with a wax stamp. He opened it with shaking fingers. Inside was a USB drive and a note. Elliot read it aloud, voice barely above a whisper. If you hear the tune again, it means I'm dead. My stomach dropped. Who wrote that? Elliot flipped the note over. A name at the bottom, scrawled in hurried pen, Graham Vale. Silence pressed in around us. Elliot looked up at me, eyes wide. He knew, he whispered. He knew it would come back. My phone buzzed hard, as if it had been waiting for this moment. Too late. Elliot's head snapped toward the unit entrance. Footsteps echoed outside, slow, deliberate. Then faintly, from somewhere down the row, a violin, the minor key, played softly as if someone was approaching with a lullaby. Elliot grabbed the tapes, shoving them into the suitcase. We have to go, he hissed. I grabbed the USB drive and the note. The violin grew louder. The melody tightened around the air like wire. At the unit entrance, a shadow fell across the threshold. A calm voice spoke from the darkness. You found it, it said. And then the man stepped into view. Not the ordinary-faced inheritor from Soho. This was someone else. Older, sharper, eyes that carried the confidence of someone who'd been pulling strings long before we noticed. He smiled. Hello, Mara, he said softly, as if we were old friends. My blood turned to ice. I'd never told him my name. He didn't need to introduce himself. The way he stood, relaxed, certain, as if the world arranged itself around his desires, told me he'd been the hand all along. Elliot shifted beside me, flashlight shaking. Who are you? Elliot demanded, voice trembling with anger. The man smiled faintly. A patron, he said, of music, of theater, of consequences. He stepped closer, and the violin melody stopped abruptly. The silence that followed felt like a trap snapping shut. You shouldn't have opened that unit, he said mildly. Elliot's jaw clenched. We're leaving. The man glanced toward the gate, amused. Are you? He asked. Outside, more footsteps, multiple. Elliot's shoulders sagged slightly. He'd heard it too, the closing circle. The man's gaze returned to me. You're curious, he said, almost fond. Curiosity makes such charming disasters. I forced my voice steady. You're Silas Trent. His smile widened. Ah, he murmured. So Pritchard still tells stories. You're supposed to be gone, Elliot spat. Trent shrugged. People assume what they need to assume to sleep at night. He stepped into the unit fully now, hands clasped behind his back, eyes sweeping over the boxes. And you found my library, he said softly. Lovely, isn't it? All the little truths people would kill to keep hidden. You killed Graham Vale, I said, though my voice shook. Trent's expression didn't change. Graham killed himself, he replied calmly. With his decisions, I simply removed his illusion of safety. My stomach twisted. He nodded toward the suitcase Elliot held. Give me the tapes, he said. Elliot tightened his grip. No. Trent sighed, like a teacher disappointed in a student. I don't want to hurt you, he said. Hurting people is messy. It creates noise. I prefer music. He looked at me again. You've been receiving messages, he said. My heart dropped. That was you. Trent smiled. Of course. Someone had to guide you here. My skin crawled. Why? Because, Trent said gently, I needed a witness who wasn't on the tape, a fresh face, someone who could be blamed without pulling down my real assets. He tilted his head. You think this is about blackmail. It's not. Blackmail is crude. This is about control. Elliot's breathing was ragged. People panicked in Covent Garden, he said. You did that. Trent nodded. A public reminder. A tune played in the open so everyone who owes me can feel it in their bones. He glanced toward the unit entrance again, as if listening. And soon, he continued, voice soft, those who owe will pay again. Money, silence, favors, whatever I ask. I swallowed hard. And if they don't? Trent smiled without warmth. Elliot's face contorted. Trent's eyes flicked to him. No, he said quietly. I'm realistic. London is full of people who do terrible things and call it survival. I simply price it. He stepped closer, reaching for the suitcase. Elliot recoiled, and in that moment, something inside me snapped. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket and held it up. Trent's gaze locked onto it. His expression sharpened, the first genuine emotion I'd seen. You opened it, he said softly. I haven't. I lied. Trent's smile thinned. That drive contains a confession, he said. Graham's last attempt at being brave. It is useless. Is it? I asked, voice trembling. Trent's eyes narrowed. You're gambling, he murmured. Yes, I said, because you've been doing it for years with other people's lives. For a heartbeat, the air held still. Then Trent sighed. Very well, he said. Let's make this simple. You give me the drive and the tapes, and you walk out alive. Elliot shook his head, furious. Mara. But I couldn't see another option, not with men closing in outside, not with Trent's calm certainty. I looked at Elliot. Run when you can, I whispered. Then I threw the USB drive. Not to Trent. Past him, out of the unit doorway, into the darkness. Trent's eyes widened in genuine shock. He spun, stepping after it, and in that split second, Elliot moved. He swung the suitcase hard into Trent's ribs, knocking him sideways. Trent grunted,
stumbling. "Now!" Elliot shouted. We bolted, out of the unit, sprinting down the row as footsteps thundered behind us. We tore through the gate, into the open air, rain slapping our faces. Elliot shoved me toward the car. We got in, tires squealing as he floored it, the storage facility lights blurring behind us. Only when we hit the main road did I realize something cold.
I'd thrown the USB drive away, but Trent hadn't shouted for his men to chase it. He'd shouted something else, something I heard now echoing in my head over the roar of the engine. "Let her go. Bring me the tape." My stomach dropped. He didn't care about the confession. He cared about something else. Elliot glanced at me, face pale. "What did you do?" I stared out into the rain-soaked night. "I think," I whispered, "I just proved the tape isn't the only weapon." By morning, Covent Garden looked innocent again. The market stalls opened, coffee steamed, tourists flowed in. Performers tuned instruments and tested microphones. The city reset, smiling. But I knew better now. Elliot and I sat in his car a street away, watching the piazza like we were staking out a crime scene. My stomach was hollow with exhaustion and adrenaline. "We still have the tapes," Elliot said, tapping the suitcase on the seat. "And we have Lenora, Marcus, Pritchard, people who can testify." "Testify to what?" I asked bitterly. "A tune? A system? A man who vanishes behind money?" Elliot's jaw tightened. "Then we make it public," he said. "We play the tune back on him." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" Elliot pulled out his phone and showed me something he'd found on one of the tapes, an old recording of the knock being played, clear and clean. But at the end, there was something else. A voice. Graham Vale's voice, shaky and hoarse. "If you hear the tune again," he said on the recording, "it means I'm dead. And it means Silas Trent is still alive." My skin prickled. "That's on the tape." Elliot nodded. "Not the USB drive, on the VHS, hidden like an Easter egg." I felt a surge of fierce relief. Trent had wanted the tapes because they carried more than blackmail. They carried his name spoken aloud. "What do we do with it?" I whispered. Elliot's eyes were hard. "We bring it to the one place Trent can't control without being seen." I looked out toward the piazza. "The crowd," I murmured. Elliot nodded. "You said it yourself. He hides in public, so we expose him in public." The plan was reckless, dangerous, the kind of plan that only makes sense when you're already trapped. But there was a strange clarity in it, too. If Trent's power lived in secrets, then daylight was the only antidote. We called Lenora. She didn't answer at first. Then she did, voice breathless. "They played it at my street this morning," she whispered. "Outside my flat. Softly, like they were laughing." "Lenora," I said quickly, "we need you at Covent Garden, now." Silence, then a tight laugh. "Of course you do." "We have proof," Elliot cut in. "We have Vale's voice naming Trent." Lenora's breathing hitched. "I'll come," she said. "If I'm going to die, I'd rather die where the lights are on." We called Marcus. He answered on the third ring, voice shaking. "I'm leaving the country," he said immediately. "Marcus," I said, "if you run, he wins. If you stay, we can end us." A bitter pause. "You don't end men like Trent," Marcus whispered. "You only survive them." "We have evidence," I insisted. "We need you there." Marcus's voice broke slightly. "Fine," he whispered. "But if this goes wrong, Don't say I didn't warn you. By noon, we were in the piazza. It was crowded, as expected. The perfect stage. Elliot positioned himself near the steps with a small portable speaker hidden in a shopping bag. Lenora stood nearby, scarf tight, eyes sharp and haunted.
Marcus hovered on the edge, face pale, sweating despite the cold. I stood in the center, pretending to be a tourist, heart pounding so hard I thought people could hear it. We waited. And then, like clockwork, a busker stepped into the usual spot. Not the original violinist, not the accordion player. A new one, young, clean-cut, guitar slung across his chest. He smiled at the crowd and began to play something cheerful. Coins dropped, people relaxed. Then he shifted, minor key, the knock. The air tightened. Lenora flinched violently. Marcus's face drained of color. Around us, people who weren't supposed to react suddenly stiffened. Tiny tells, small betrayals of fear. And then I saw him. Silas Trent stood at the edge of the crowd, hands in his coat pockets, expression calm, watching reactions like a conductor watching an orchestra. He caught my eye. His smile was small and confident. He believed he still owned the stage. I gave Elliot the smallest nod. Elliot pressed play. From the portable speaker, hidden among the crowd noise, another sound rose, clear, sharp. Not the busker's live melody, a recording. Graham Zale's voice. If you hear the tune again, the voice crackled, it means I'm dead, and it means Silas Trent is still alive. The words cut through the piazza like a knife. People turned, confusion rippled, phones lifted. The busker's fingers faltered, the knock stuttering. Trent froze. For the first time, real emotion flickered across his face, shock, then fury. He surged forward through the crowd, eyes locked on the source of the sound. But it was too late. The recording continued, Vale's voice naming names, describing the system, describing the blackmail. Phones captured everything now, tourists filming what they thought was street drama, locals posting live. Trent shoved someone aside, moving with sudden violence, trying to reach Elliot. Lenora stepped into his path. You took 20 years from me, she hissed. Trent's eyes flashed. Move, he snapped. Lenora didn't. Marcus, trembling, stepped up beside her. And you took everything from him, Marcus said, voice cracking. From all of us. Trent's smile returned, thin, cruel. You gave it to me, he said softly. You were always so eager to pay. Then, in the chaos, the busker tried to regain control, playing the knock louder, as if volume could restore power. But the crowd had changed. The tune didn't feel like an invisible threat anymore. It felt exposed, named, documented. Trent's eyes darted as he realized what was happening, his secrecy dissolving into 100 live streams. He stepped back, scanning for an exit. Elliot moved closer to me, breath shaking. He's going to vanish, he whispered. And he was right. Trent slipped into the crowd like a shadow, using bodies as cover, moving fast. For a heartbeat, I thought he'd escape. Then I saw something strange. The busker stopped playing. He looked up, eyes wide, staring past us. He wasn't looking at Trent.
He was looking at a line of uniformed police pushing through the crowd. Someone had called, or someone had been waiting for the right moment. Trent's head snapped up. His face went rigid. He turned, trying to bolt, and slipped. A smile of someone who'd lived with fear long enough to understand its weakness in daylight. No, she said clearly,
loud enough for the nearest phones to catch. Not anymore. The police reached Trent, hands on his arms, lifting him. He struggled, but the crowd's attention pinned him harder than any grip. As he was led away, the busker stood frozen, guitar hanging limp, eyes empty. A messenger, a hired hand, a performer paid to play a tune with teeth. The piazza exhaled slowly, the city trying to reset again. But this time, the story wouldn't vanish, because 100 videos were already uploading, because the knock had been named, and because for the first time in 20 years, Lenora Blythe stood under open London sky and listened to normal street noise without flinching. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt something colder.
Because as the police car doors closed and Trent disappeared, my phone buzzed one last time. A message from the unknown number. Different tone, different weight. Just 4 words, simple as a chord. The tune has echoes. I stared at the screen, the rain on my lashes blurring the words. Elliot leaned close. What does that mean? I looked out at the market, the crowd, the performers picking up their instruments again as if nothing had happened. And somewhere, deep in the noise of London, I thought I heard it, a faint, stubborn minor key phrase, not played loudly, not performed for attention, but hummed by someone who hadn't panicked, someone who'd smiled, someone who'd been listening for a signal, because systems like Trent's didn't die in a single arrest. They simply changed hands. And in a city that never stops moving, a melody is the easiest thing in the world to pass on.